Welcome back. Great to have you with us. President Trump signed an executive order today calling for the withholding of federal funds for schools and universities that impose a COVID-19 vaccine mandate. Tom LoBianco and Stephanie Lai are back with us as part of our reporter panel. Stephanie is in Munich. She's still there. She hasn't taken a flight or a train anywhere else. Tom LoBianco, I won't let him leave the desk, so he's right here with me. Tom, I want to start with you. Okay, does this really mean anything? Is this an executive order to grab headlines or actually do something?
Yeah, there's show horse and workhorse.
Okay, yes,
orders.
I've heard of that.
This one seems more like a show horse.
Okay, why?
Schools do not mandate this.
Right now?
K-12.
They're not doing it.
No, it's not. Colleges, some still mandate this.
Small number.
15, yeah, something like that.
15,
yeah.
Yeah.
This feels like, now the question next on all these executive orders, because we've seen this with the use of DEI, for instance, what is it about a hammer for something else?
Is it preparatory for something
Yes.
else? Yeah.
Will it be used? Because remember, too, Musk is already getting into the Department of Education to eliminate a lot of funding in there. Whether or not that holds will be a question of the courts,
right?
Obviously. This feels in line with that, concurrent with that. So is this a hammer? It feels more like a hammer right now, not directly effective.
Stephanie, I'm glad Tom mentioned the word hammer, because I wonder if there at the Munich Security Conference, in addition to all the other national security foreign policy issues that we discussed earlier, there was this long-running conversation this week with lots of ups and downs about tariffs and whether they will or will not happen. Lots of rhetoric from President Trump about the European Union. If those at the Munich Security Conference perceive that tariff talk as another kind of hammer from the Trump administration.
That's a really interesting question, and I think it'll depend on who you speak to. But I think largely a lot of the European leaders have started to recognize some of Trump's mannerisms, and having dealt with him in the first administration, they understand that there are moments where he might float an idea that ends up being more of a negotiation tactic rather than a solid plan or something that will go into effect immediately. And I think that's what we've been seeing with these reciprocal tariffs that we believe will come into place in April. But of course, all of the timing, the levels, they remain pretty fluid right now. And I think that's one of those signs for European leaders that this is an opportunity for them to go to the negotiation table or to start up conversations to prevent any tariffs from actually getting put in place.
And Stephanie, does it feel like the Trump administration is trying to insert itself into European democratic conversations? We talked about the censorship allegation a moment ago, but also Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth talking about increasing defense budgets. Well, to do that, governments have to do that with the consent of the people in their own country, which has been something that has been problematic over the years. That's got to be part of the conversation there, I would imagine.
I would imagine that too. I think another thing to note is that for some of these European leaders, the sense is that they already are contributing quite a bit. When the Trump administration says that they're not pulling their weight in terms of defense spending, that doesn't always account for some of the other forms of aid that these European countries are providing for Ukraine in efforts to resolve or find a conflict for the war. And so oftentimes, that message might not necessarily resonate with Europeans. And it's definitely something that was under consideration and perhaps one of the sticking points between the Trump administration and the delegation from the U.S. and the rest of the world leaders.
And Tom, to Stephanie's point, several of the European countries closest to Ukraine would say, Mr. President Trump, whether you think we are providing large enough checks for military or economic aid, we have absorbed hundreds of thousands of refugees from that war and done so at our cost and our accommodation.
Absolutely. If you talk with the European diplomats throughout this, I mean, we were going on 3 years of this. Certainly it was not ended in the first 24 hours of this administration. That they
one of the long-running campaign promises, if you remember. First aid, 24 hours. I can end this right away. Not happening.
Is that they are the physical buffer. And that, I remember talking with a few diplomats a couple of years ago about this and questions about China and Taiwan because, we have to be positioned in all things, right, as a global superpower. And they said, if you want to deal with that, first you have to deal with, if you want Europe's support in these matters, first you have to deal with Ukraine, because for that reason, we are absorbing this hit. So, again, this talk about Poland, putting forces in, all right, to bolster again, potentially against Ukraine, again.
There are lots of ways to support, lots of ways to assist. Perhaps the Trump administration is not sifting all of them to the European satisfaction. Tom LoBianco right here at the table with me. Stephanie Lai in Munich, thank you very much.